This is Unit 5 and 6, and our production was 12th Night. For the process, as we always do, I, myself and my colleagues, went in, all gathered and went into a room. We call it the control room, and including one of our tutors, and we just sat for a bit and talked about the play and what it was about, and then after a while we then began to discuss what kind of roles all of us would want. So if it was, we had the roles we put on the whiteboard were obviously management. I'll start with management. So there was production manager, stage manager, deputy stage manager, and ASM 1, or just ASM. That was like all the management roles we could choose from, and then after that we had set designer, and then props, or we just put it as set and props because they usually go hand in hand together. And then moving towards the more technical side of things, we had we had lighting and sound. Now there are more specific jobs in those roles, but I cannot remember what they're called, so I'm just gonna stick with lighting and sound. Now the way we usually do it is you just our tutor calls out the role, and then you put your hand up if you want it, and if there's more than like one person who wants it, they obviously put their initials down for it, but if there's more than one person who wants it, then we have a discussion on who would actually get the role, and then for the person who didn't, that then became their like second choice. So they would have to pick another role as their first. But for management, it was slightly different. For instance, my role, the DSM, Deputy Stage Manager, because myself and another put our hands up, and so instead of just picking who would do it, we actually had to give our points, like give out our point of view on why we think we would be better suited for that role. Now the only reason I put my hand up for DSM is so that I could actually call a show for the first time, other than that, I wasn't planning on going for a management role this year, but as soon as I heard that I would actually be calling a show, then it re-sparked my interest. So yeah, everybody got, well, because there weren't that many of us, so everybody got the role that they initially put their hand up for. Yeah, and then as the weeks went by, a few people changed their minds. So it was the majority of the management team moved over to set and design. But yeah, which was more beneficial which had they swapped over from a management role to set design, which had more benefits than downfalls for everyone. And as we got the first after the first 2 weeks, we that's when we started not just sitting and talking of ideas. We started doing the ideas. But luckily, in our last, we still had our production meetings. We had those throughout the whole process up until the last week. And then because one of our first production meetings, one of our set designers came up with a brilliant idea, and then decided to sort of create a miniature version of their idea, just out of scrap cardboard and glue. And so we had a miniature model to present to our director, the performing arts tutor, and as soon as we presented it to her, she said yes, loved it. Could we add things? Could we, what would you want to do with it? And so, and considering our production was 12th Night, we just a more moderate a more moderate version of 12th Night. So instead of having it in the 16th century when Shakespeare was around, it was more in the 21st century. And so so from then on, we always had that as that model as our set. So all we needed to do was dress it and accumulate the props, as well as that was for those two teams. And then while they were doing that, lighting was coming up with color theories and a lighting plan to fit around, like to fit with what we already had up in the gantry and what we could use, and then came up with color theories. I spoke to the head of lighting, and most of their ideas were used, but obviously talking to the director and having team meetings, we obviously changed some. I changed some ideas. And then speaking to sound, they were mainly going through the script, finding what sounds they had in the script and sourcing them, and then speaking to the director, finding out what sounds they wanted in, and what they didn't want in. And so throughout the whole the majority of the process, that's what they were doing, just sourcing and configuring sounds. Some of them were from obviously YouTube, and then other sounds they created themselves. So if there was a piece of dialogue over speaking through a phone, or a tannoid system, they would go out with a handheld recording device and source it that way. As the weeks went by, there were obviously issues. You can't have a production without any issues. It's just never heard of. Some of them were minor, so it was easily dealt with, and then others took a bit more time, but we always came up either with a solution or a compromise. For instance, when some of the management team felt as if they were unfit to be in that role, so they talked and obviously talked it over, asked if it was okay to move to set, and they did. Another example is sound have one that sound came across is they had trouble with one of the recordings they made. It, no matter what they did to it, it sounded like the person's voice sounded like either too fast or too slow, or like a chipmunk. They eventually figured out how to get the sound to what they wanted and to what the director wanted. So we only had 6 weeks for this 12th Night production, and towards the beginning it felt like ages away, but then the weeks just flew by. So during like the third and fourth week, that's when we got all the decking and the scaffolds, and actually started to build the set, and build where the audience were sitting, and then obviously and then after we built it, we then dressed it, and after that was done, we could then focus on props more. Obviously we still had to dress the set and make it look nice, but instead of just working with chairs and like a layout, we actually built it. There were still some things set had to do, like for instance, make and build the doorways, like a freeway, a door frame that could hold 3 doors. That was tricky, because running into problems with that, you could get one door to close and open fine while the other 2 were stiff or just wouldn't close, and then you could fix that problem, but then the door that was just fine had other problems. It was a tricky situation, and then we had to create a set of stairs, almost as if they were spiraling, but more straight spiral, if that makes sense. So and then we obviously had to do a whole risk assessment and health and safety thing on it, because our set was at a height where it was needed, and obviously we had the stairs, so we had to put safety railing on, which was good because it made it easier to dress it. And it was also beneficial to have to make the stairs hollow, so we could actually fit a speaker underneath it, and took all the wires in underneath the stairs, because we as well as dressing the set, we had fairy lights in it as well, so you could just hide the wires under the stairs, like all the excess wire. And then towards the final 2 weeks, that's when everything like came like everything came together. So because during the 5th week, that's when we all helped with lighting, to like and with rigging and de-rigging the trust. And then obviously with the tutor's help and everyone else's help, we managed to focus all of them, put the correct gels in, put them in the correct positions, and that was during the 5th week. And then the last week, that's when we did all the tech runs and the dress rehearsals, and then it was show night.